Hi, this is Craig Lane with Health Alchemy video blog week 16. We're going to be talking about pain and tissue trauma and basically moving on after a site of injury. And this video blog is prompted by a strained knee I got a few days ago and the many injuries I've had in my lifetime. I've had a broken neck, C6, C7, fractured those vertebrae 26 years ago. Have had numerous knee clumps and strains and a blown out MCL and an inguinal hernia that I've been managing naturally for 12 years. And I say these things because pain is something that is felt in a sense of perception. And my spiritual teacher once said that if we could get rid of all the stories and the excessive drama we have about pain, our suffering would be reduced by 90%. And I thought that was pretty profound. And I took that to heart over 10 years ago, well over 10 years ago, and have practiced sort of a neutral observation of pain as a sensation. And so when we have an injury, say a knee strain or a blunt trauma, fall, anything that's not a broken bone, that's more of a strain, broken bones fall into a more long-term category. But what we want to look at is the first phase of after trauma is what's called the inflammatory phase. And it's natural to have inflammation, and it's natural right after the time of injury because we want to have localized swelling so more stuff can come in there, white blood cells and enzymes and things. We're trying to generate, our body's trying to generate a cellular response. And the white blood cells are coming in to digest, especially if it's a cut, digest microorganisms and set down fibrin and get rid of debris that might be in the area. And then a range of, we had a video blog about growth factors versus tearing down factors. So if we're in a good state of health, then our body will begin to produce a range of growth factors and something called a cytokine that promotes the next phase of healing, which is called the proliferation phase. That begins several days after the injury. And it's the generation of, like, we're looking at basically like the generation of repair material and the production of healthy scar tissue. And these repair cells, we really want to make sure that we're giving ourselves something that's called a glycoaminoglycan or a proteoglycan, because they're like the repair substance. And that's where we need to have the right kind of minerals and protein in our diet and nutrients. And if you're thinking about things that you can use, we'll be talking about a few herbs and foods you can eat in just a few minutes here. And then we're going to be talking about the mental component of it after that. So new collagen is laid down, and we want to make sure that we're breathing well because low oxygen is also going to limit the healing process. We want to make sure that we're not toxic. So one of the things I noted, and that I first heard about it in Dan Millman's book, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, that when he shattered his hip, he was advised to fast and eat very simply. And so after my knee injury, I got home the next day and proceeded to do a coffee enema. Had mostly a liquid diet of juice, and I do the Gap shake, which was basically juice with sour cream and egg yolks and raw milk that night, and just ate really, really simply. And the coffee enema, the pain went down about 50%. And I was doing topicals, and arnica is one of the best things you can do topically and internally. Homeopathic arnica is fantastic for tissue trauma and also topically. So keep that in mind, that arnica is a great thing that opens up the blood vessels and encourages drainage. And it's just a great product, great herb for this sort of thing. So really want to encourage, like, get tissue debris out of the way so stuff can flow through. We have a lot of debris and things blocking circulation, like sludge in the system, and that's going to limit getting waste material out and fresh cells in. And we're not going to go into so much the, we can talk about fibroblasts and myofibroblasts and angiogenesis and all that. But we don't need to worry about medical terms. It's just think about the body is laying a groundwork. So if there's a cut, we're going to be laying down new tissue so that the blood will stop, first of all, but that's a whole other series of factors. So the inflammatory phase ends after a few days, and then the proliferation phase occurs after that. And we want to make sure that we're getting foods that will encourage this, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And the final phase is the remodeling phase. So the remodeling phase begins about 2 or 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks after the injury, and can continue for a long time, 6 months or longer. I know my broken neck, I probably didn't feel normal for almost a year afterwards. We want to remodulate the scar tissue. So if there's a cut, when it scabs over, when it's finally healed, we really want to make sure that we're keeping it moist. So coconut oil, jojoba oil, sesame oil, whatever oils you can get your hand on, as long as it's not those highly reactive canolas and soy oils. I really encourage you to put the same oil on your skin that you would put inside your body, because with those oils, anything you put on your skin is going to end up in your bloodstream and your lymph eventually anyways. And then working the scar tissue is going to be helpful. Working it each direction and pressing in there and rubbing around and getting some intelligent, because when we work it, we develop a nice web instead of this disorganized glob of scar tissue and keloids and things that can develop. So wheat germ oil is great for that also. Factors that are going to inhibit your healing after a trauma is vitamin C deficiency and poor protein intake, zinc deficiency, and again, protein deficiency from good raw proteins are going to slow down the healing process because we need those for repair. Poor blood flow to the area is going to cut it off. So we need to make sure that we're moving around a bit, and that's one of the things that I want to talk about is my own sense of what I needed to do was I did the injury where I twisted my knee. I was on one leg dancing, and my lower leg was planted, my upper leg turned slightly, and there was a strain, and there was an immediate sense of pain and but I didn't stop because I knew I could still move around. I could test it, and I could still keep weight on it, and it was stable. So over the next few days, I didn't stop moving, and the reason why I did that was because there was a lymphatic element, and I noticed that when I stretched it gently, kept it moving, rubbed a topical arnica with herbs on it, kept the blood flow moving, that it's now 2 days later, 48 hours later, and I've already got most of my function back. So some of the herbs that we can use for initial trauma are myrrh and yarrow. I like to use plantain, and self-heal, especially for cuts. Aloe is great. Arnica is one of the top of the list, and calendula. Those are all some of my favorite herbs for the initial trauma. MediHerb from the Standard Process, partner in the Standard Process lineage, they have a great product that's a tablet that's very helpful, and that's gotu kola, ginkgo, and grapeseed. That's very, very helpful. For the proliferation phase, we want plants that are going to encourage good blood flow and good cell growth, and my favorite of these is comfrey, topically and internally. Lavender is very helpful, the essential oil, or the tea from the herb. You could infuse lavender into olive oil, put that on. Aloe is great for this. Plantain again. The herb self-heal, kind of Prunella vulgaris is the Latin name. And for blood flow, I like the idea of horse chestnut or California buckeye. The seeds from that plant, the extract, is great for blood flow in this case. And then there's something we'll talk about, a special type of carbohydrate called a glycoaminoglycan or a mucopolysaccharide. These are long unbranched polysaccharides or sugars, and they're essential for life, and they're basically like in the Chinese system we would call them yin tonics, and but they help rebuild the connective tissue, the cartilage, the tendons, and the skin if it's been torn. In this family, we could talk about galactose from dairy, glucosamines in this same category, galactosamine, glucuronic acid. You'll probably notice some of those. And then for the remodeling phase, any fresh raw fruits and vegetables are going to be helpful during the remodeling phase. Sea vegetables are going to be very helpful. So those infamous seaweeds. Comfrey is going to be helpful. Aloe, wheat germ oil. Cold lasers can have a good value here. Any vitamin E rich food, so in other words, your raw virgin oils, and horse chestnut could be another. And you could add a few more to this list, but these are just my personal favorites. And then moving on to the mental element of this is, so by by not believing the stories in my mind, because believe me, there was a lot of panic. Like I had hurt my leg dancing, and I wanted to continue dancing with my girlfriend, and we were able to dance for another hour, hour and a half, and it was sort of painful, but was able to move around and still boogie down a bit. And then the next day, we were in the car for quite a while, for 4 hours, 2 hours to and from Sedona, Arizona, from Phoenix. And one of the things I noticed was that the more I moved around, the better it got. And I had a really interesting experience in the river in Sedona. I immersed my leg and lower body, and basically, there's a whole side story with this, but what ended up happening was that the pain dropped 80% being in the river and immersing myself, sort of baptizing myself in the water. And it was an interesting experience again of the hike to the river from the what they call the Cathedral Rock parking lot around the side of the rock and then down was excruciatingly painful. And on the way back, I had 80% of my function back because it was very stiff and I couldn't straighten the leg. And one of the things that we do is we tend to hold ourselves in ways, and because the knee and the hip are such important and the ankle are such important parts of movement, all the tissue around it will tend to freeze up. And so if this is my knee right here, then I noticed that my foot, my calf was incredibly tight today. And so again, not believing the stories in my mind and continuing to move. It's just a really important piece to not baby ourselves too much. If we have function, well, the way I've always thought of it is if I have function, I'm going to move. I'm going to get out there and get in the fresh air and keep things moving. We really want to make sure that we're doing well to, one, not believe the stories in our mind, keep moving, of course, get adequate rest, follow the icy and the hot thing, hot packs and ice packs. Castor oil packs are very important. And if you have a broken bone, then of course it's important to stay off it and get medical attention right away. What I'm often referring to here is once the broken bone's healed and as soon as you can move around, then it's important to get yourself moving around. Broken legs and hips, anything where there's weight-bearing parts, you're going to have to wait until the doctor or you feel that x-rays or your own sense of 4 to 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks out that you're ready to put some weight on that sucker. But don't believe the medical people either, because you can also get incredibly fast healing if you're using the right things. Again, in the standard process lineage, they have a product called Ligaplex 1 and 2, different products that I find great for injury and trauma, and I find Comfrey helpful for remodulation of connective tissue strains topically and internally. And don't underestimate myrrh. And there's a famous Chinese liniment that you could put on that's not a open wound, but a blunt trauma, and that's called Dit Dat Jiao. DITDAT, Dit Dat Jiao. J as in jam, IAO, Dit Dat Jiao. That's a really, really good liniment to put on topically after a strain of any sort. And for bleeding wounds, the herbs I mentioned earlier are great, plantain and self-heal, and there's an old all-purpose liniment developed by Jethro Kloss that I actually offer in my clinic, and that's a combination of myrrh, cayenne, and golden seal, and then I add in plantain and self-heal and calendula in with my particular variation. But myrrh, cayenne, and golden seal are just fantastic herbs because the cayenne will reduce the pain. The golden seal kind of helps disinfect the local site of cut, and the myrrh also is a disinfectant, but you also get this astringent action to help stop the bleeding and again just disinfect and clean and encourage that healthy inflammation. My knee, when I did the actual injury, it didn't actually hurt for a while, and it wasn't swollen until I put on my topical arnica liniment with myrrh and all the herbs that were associated with it. Is actually a bright orange salve. I took the arnica internally, and then the swelling and inflammation came on within the half hour of that. It was just astounding to see like how fast the herbs made things work, because I was a little afraid if I wasn't having that initial inflammatory response, that the knee wasn't going to get all the nutrients and all the white blood cells in there. And now 48 hours later, it's still a bit swollen, but I'm not expecting a totally fast recovery. And then I also had a chiropractic adjustment on the knee today just to make sure that the two bones were set and lined up properly. So really, pain and recovery from pain or injury It was really important. And I'll tell a story about another man in my practice. He had a back injury from snowboarding, and he fell on compression, tried to do a flip in the air on a jump snowboarding, and landed on pretty much a hard pack on his tailbone, and obviously, compressed his spine. And he was out of commission for a while, and then he read a book by a physician named Alan Sarno, Sarno, called Healing Back Pain. And the gist of that is basically what I've been saying: is just get over it, don't baby it, move on with your life. And so this guy was pain free within a week. He was a surfer, and he just basically went out there and started surfing again, and not babying it too much. I love the idea of that, and it was really amazing to me. So pain and its associated sensations, such as suffering, we can talk about suffering is a byproduct of pain by the stories we tell ourselves about the pain, and even a sense of self-worth that when we're in physical pain, and could even tie into emotional pain, even some forms of, we could term it mental pain, that we often can go to this place of, I know I have in the past, of it determines like self-worth, like, oh, if I'm in pain, something's wrong, and I'm not worthy of getting better, or I'm not a worthy human being because I'm in pain. And that's total hogwash. I think it's really important for us to recognize that all phenomena are equal in one sense, and we don't need to judge ourselves too harshly when things are going off, especially like in an injury, and berating ourselves because we fell, or because we clunked our head, or because we clunked our knee. I know it's really important for me that to see that inner judge. I know that in the past I had this little guy back there going, "You idiot," and I would literally hear myself saying that, "You idiot." And now that's absent after years of work in trying to work with this part of me, just recognizing that there's a judge in there as part of programming. So keep an eye on that. And this is Craig Lane with Health Alchemy, HealthAlchemy, healthalchemy.com. It can be reached at that website. And looking forward to hearing any stories, or you can contact me on Facebook, Craig Lane, or Health Alchemy Nutrition on Facebook. There's a new Health Alchemy page on Facebook also we're going to be developing. And I'd love to hear any stories you might have about pain and things you've overcome and injuries, because I know that by following the steps that I've outlined here in this video, we can get a lot better. And I hope you all have a beautiful week. Until next time, we'll be posting week 17 with a lot of joy. Take good care.